There. So, end of another week, eh? End of another week. And hello,
And a long
everybody.
weekend ahead.
Yeah, long weekend ahead. I only realised that a few days ago. So that's very nice, isn't it?
Yeah,
Hi, Jim. Lovely to see you. Um, yeah. So, misplaced childhood. Um,
yeah.
yeah. So what? Why Marillion for you? Because when you said, "Oh, I want to do," which album was it you
I
suggested?
wanted to do Clutching at Straws, which
Yeah.
was the follow up album to this one. It was actually Fish's last album with the band, and you suggested this one, and I'm absolutely cool with that. I don't mind any of Marillion's early back catalogue. That's absolutely fine.
But primarily because I've had, as I said to you just before we went on, I bought a copy of this when this was in the charts. It's £7.99 from Record House in Amersham when I was, I don't know, 17 or however long it
But I also bought a copy, but in fairness, mine's only 3 weeks old and cost me 35 quid from HMV in Southampton.
Yeah, so it's a funny one, Marillion, because as I was saying to you, Ieuan, that I went to school in Great Missenden. So Great Missenden, and then the next stop out is Wendover, then Stoke Mandeville, then Aylesbury, where Marillion came from. So they were doing the pub scene locally when I was just, well, in those days it didn't matter whether you were just old enough to drink or not. You used to go to the pub when you were 15 or 16 or whatever. Anyway, I would go to the pub, and I heard these guys a number of times, and everyone at school was wowed by Marillion. And I was determined not to be wowed by Marillion because everybody else was wowed by Marillion. And I thought, that bloke, stupid name. Who calls himself Fish? Really? Who calls himself Fish? So I had a really negative.
Yeah, but if you work out what his real name is, actually Fish is probably better.
Well, yeah, you good point. Good point. But I had a very very negative attitude towards Marillion. So I came to this thinking, well, I've got the album for Misplaced Childhood. I know one of the songs. Well, everyone knows one of the songs on this album, but it'll be fairly vacuous, pointless music, and I came into this knowing that I was going to find it vacuous and pointless. So imagine my surprise when I listened to the album.
So we have a bit of a similarity thing because I came obviously I'm aware of Kaylee and the other big hit singles, but I also discovered Marillion when I started going out to the pubs drinking. But for me, it was Clutching at Straws and the song Incommunicado, because I used to go to a heavy metal night at the local nightclub on a Tuesday, and this was always one of the songs they played. And then you kind of go back and start investigating the back catalogue. So my introduction to Marillion is also alcohol related, which is actually quite apt given the way this album was written.
Yes, yes, indeed. So 1985, interesting year, and it's amazing, isn't it? Because my daughter is 22, my son is 19. So all of the big life events that we've been through were all kicking off at this time. So Gorbachev took over as leader of the Soviet Union. Reagan became president of the US. Rock Hudson died of AIDS. The miners' strike ended. The Sinclair C5 was launched and
Stopped.
failed. Yeah. Dire Straits' album Brothers in Arms became the first compact disc to sell over 1 million copies. Live Aid, riots in Brixton and Handsworth. Books came. Orange is Not the Only Fruit, The Handmaid's Tale, Skeleton Crew, Accidental Tourist, and Contact, Carl Sagan all came out. Films: View to a Kill, Out of Africa, Fletch, Room with a View, Purple Rose of Cairo, The Jewel of the Nile, Brewster's Millions, Desperately Seeking Susan, St. Elmo's Fire, A Chorus Line, Breakfast Club, The Goonies, Weird Science, Back to the... I'm just like, oh my God. And maybe it's because I was a teenager at the time.
So I looked at this year, and I did the same bit of research as you did. I looked at it if I'm thinking 1980. If you had a different show that was proved to me that this year is the best year in music, the best year in film, the best year in things that happened, 1985 I think would be one of the ones that would come quite high up on the list of shows that you did.
I would agree.
The music that was in the charts this year, Brothers in Arms you've already mentioned, The Smiths, Meter's Murder, Kate Bush, Hounds of Love, Whitney Houston, Aha, Phil Collins, Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, Madonna, Like a Virgin, Tears for Fears, Songs of the Big. There's all these albums you kind of think, what a year for music.
Around the World in a Day, Prince.
Yes, which was the follow up to Purple Rain, wasn't it? The kind of didn't land as well as Purple Rain did for some reason.
I loved it though. I mean, Raspberry Beret, what a fantastic. Be Yourself Tonight, Eurythmics, Little Creatures, Talking Heads.
Yep.
Brothers
not the perfect year, because there'll be other years, but you could pick this and say, actually, this is a very good year to be talking about. And for this album to come out and not even feature in the top 10 or 20 albums that sold in that year is staggering.
Yeah, absolutely. And I put this on, and I knew what I was going to get, and as we always say, you prep for the album by listening to the music a few times, and I was just blown away. I mean, I was utterly blown away by this album.
Yeah, as I said before in our chat, and I'll apologise to the audience now. I've made lots of notes, but they're really disjointed, because every time I did my notes, I had the record on in the background, and the record always took priority. And I then just drifted and stopped. I wasn't as focused as I would be normally. Yeah, absolutely blown away. And I knew all the songs because I've got lots of live performances on my iTunes library and stuff, but I'd never heard it from track 1 to track 2 in this case.
Yeah.
But yeah, what an album.
Yeah. So
look at the comments. I'm not sure that everyone agrees.
No, I don't think, and they probably are coming to this with the same preconceptions that we came to this with. It says Marillion emerged from the post-punk music scene in Britain and existed as a bridge between the styles of punk rock and classic progressive rock, becoming the most commercially successful neo-prog rock band of the 1980s. There you go. Who knew?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one, because were they considered prog rock at the time? I don't think I even knew what prog rock was when I was a teenager. They were definitely a rock band. But yeah. No.
Yeah. So Fish, Derek William Dick. I can't find anywhere a note of why he calls himself Fish. Did you get anything on this?
Not why he calls himself Fish, but apparently he was he worked in a forest. He was a lumberjack type person,
right?
And he was just always known as Fish. And I didn't. To be honest, I didn't look as to why he was called Fish. But if my name was Derek William Dick, then I think I would want something different as well.
Yeah. So, and tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be Peter Gabriel. Sorry, chaps. Well, it's funny you should say that, because his voice has been described as both distinct and a conflation of Roger Daltrey and Peter Gabriel, which...
I mean, when we get to track 1, that's Peter Gabriel all over. You kind of listen and go, okay, yeah, got that reference, tick.
Yeah, absolutely. And it says here, his lyrics have been described as poetic prose. In 2004, Classic Rock ranked Fish at number 49 on its list of the 100 greatest frontmen of all time. Again, who knew?
You know what? I don't disagree. I think when you come, I mean, that's a tough table to draw up. But when you listen to, when you see what he's written, and when you hear what he's written, he talks a lot in metaphors. In one of the things he talks about smoked-shaped bracelets. And you can visualize what he's talking about. It's not so abstract that it's strange.
Yeah.
And I think from that point of view, it's very simple. It's very understandable and relatable.
Yeah. So he cites his.
There we go. Barry's told us why he's called Fish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and Graham has that. Sorry, Graham, I missed that one.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because when I was watching the video of this, I thought interesting that he looks like a slightly pudgy, lank-haired, normal-looking bloke in the video.
With a bit of a belly.
Yeah. However, he does look really clean, doesn't he? I mean, he looks very well scrubbed. So clearly, this is a nickname that he's got with good reason.
Yeah.
With good reason. So yeah, he cites his influences as Genesis, Pink Floyd, the Moody Blues, the Kinks, T-Rex, David Bowie, and he also cited Joni Mitchell as one of the biggest influences on me because of her approach to lyrics. And you can kind of see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of those. I mean, the Moody Blues, Genesis, absolutely. He's all over them. Bowie's interesting. I wonder where that link comes from, but there may be a link back to the producer of this album.
Yeah. So before we talk about the album, shall we have a little bit of burst of the first track?
Yeah, go on.
So this is
the first track is side one.
Well, yeah. Good point. I meant that first bit of it. So pseudo silk kimono. I mean, yeah. Well, let's just kick off.
Huddled in the safety of a pseudo-silk kimono, wearing bracelets of smoke, naked of understanding. Nicotine smears, long dried tears, invisible tears. Safe in my own words, learning from my own words. Cruel joke, cruel joke.
So at this point, that's exact sort of kind of forerunner of what's about to happen. But I think what is really interesting about this album, and the more I listened to it, the more it became apparent to me, is that the two long tracks on here, so Bittersweet and Blind Curve, and in fact the whole album is treated like a classical symphony. Themes are introduced and then they are developed and then they form the centerpiece of a song, and then they come into the background of the next song, and yeah, it just incredibly sophisticated.
Yeah, in all my notes, I've got, there's that motif that we heard in that song. There's that motif we heard, and the whole thing,
Yeah,
it sort of links together. There are key shifts up and down half every now and again.
yeah,
Relatively consistent. It's generally a 4/4 beat. It's not overly complicated. There's some harmonics that go in the background. There's lots of depth. There's lots of lovely layers of sound. And after, what's it? I put it on. I'd get to track 3 or 4, and that's it. It would just wash over you, and you just sink into the album.
yeah. And this track is an intro to the main event, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because,
There's a couple of things about this. I mean, I can't find anything about this online, this song itself.
no,
But Peter Gabriel's vocal style is there, unmistakable. I love the synth in the background and the way it's taken a violin type, cello type flow to it.
yeah.
And I'm probably going to say this quite a lot in the next 45 minutes. I love how clear Fish's voice is, and you can hear every single word. You wouldn't have a Marillion song with misheard lyrics.
No, absolutely. I mean, but here's the thing. I think often if the lyrics do not tell a strong story, actually it doesn't matter whether you can hear them or not. Here, everything is so poetic. These metaphors that he's creating are just so vivid and so obvious, and it is like poetry. In the same way that Leonard Cohen's lyrics are, printed in a book of poetry. You could do the same here with this. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's one of the things that comes out as we go through this as well. Is the number of literary references. He's clearly a very well-read person.
Absolutely.
Which is odd for someone that's come from a forestry background. You wouldn't expect it.
Yeah, and yeah. So like you, I've got like pages and pages and pages of notes on here. But yeah, I remember reading about him that he was very influenced by Kerouac and some of the great American authors of the kind of the early part of the 20th century.
But even the band name Marillion comes from a Tolkien book. It comes from the Smillion, was it called?
Yeah, yeah.
We've got letters and it became Marillion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, of course. So I'll skip towards the end of this track.
Yes.
Again, it's only as you listen more and more to this that you realise that all of the tracks segue from one to the next. There's a beautiful kind of setting up of the next track ahead of when the next track comes. And let's be honest, the next track, Kaylee, it's a track that everybody in the world knows. It's, I would argue, one of the best tracks of the decade. It's just like Money for Nothing in Brothers in Arms. It's kind of like one of those defining songs of the era. So let's segue into that. Do you remember chalk hearts melting on a playground wall? Do you remember dawn escapes from moon-washed college halls? I mean, it is just some of the best poetic lyricism that occurs in any track.
But again, it's you can visualize it easily, so that you can imagine chalk hearts on a playground in the rain. It's not so abstract that it's difficult to understand.
Yeah, and his voice is just so beautiful, isn't it? I mean,
I read somewhere that he's quoted as saying that this was the first time that he'd stopped trying to force the falsetto and drop more into his natural register. And I think that that might be one of the reasons why this album was their breakthrough album, or it's the one that kind of did it for them.
Yeah. So now to spoil this beautiful picture that we've all created in our minds. He wrote this, Kaylee, about several relationships he'd wrecked because he was so obsessed with his career. He especially had in mind a girlfriend he'd split up with whose forenames were Kay Lee. And he sings it that way later on. Kay was a pharmacist in Aylesbury. Which is kind of quite funny, isn't it? Because, you have visions of this kind of being some girl in Shanghai or something, maybe, and it's like you imagine it's much more romantic, particularly because we've had the kimono thing earlier, and so I feel and the colors and everything, even though it's obviously a soldier's uniform, it's got that feel that it's got some kind of Eastern mysticism to it. No, a pharmacist in Aylesbury, and there was a really funny quote. So he married the model who played Kaylee in the video for this,
okay.
Who is called Tamara Nowie. She played Fisher's elusive lover.
Harder song to write, wasn't it?
They married in 1987 and split up around 2001. After Fish divorced Tamara Nowie, he re-established contact with his old love Kay in 2005 and discovered that she'd never listened to Misplaced Childhood.
You'd have heard Kaylee though.
Well, you think
It'd be
so?
hard to escape that, wouldn't it?
I never realised that was how you felt at the time. So how about that? One of the best love songs of the decade, absolutely fantastic song, written about her, and she had no idea.
Wow, unbelievable.
Isn't that just fantastic? Yeah, shattered rock and roll myth of the song. Yeah, it is a bit like that, and I feel incredibly disappointed in some ways. Anyway, let's have a bit more, because I think that a bit further on, 2 and a bit minutes in, when we have that key change, which is just like, oh, it's perfect, isn't it? Absolutely perfect.
Confetti in our hair. By the way, didn't I break your heart? Please excuse me, I never meant to break your heart. So sorry, I never meant to break your heart, but you broke mine. Katie, is it too late to say I'm sorry? And Katie, can we get it together again? Just can't go on pretending that it came to a natural end.
So we've got into that, and I'll whiz it forward a little bit, because this just makes my hair stand on end. Well, obviously it would do. Can't anymore.
Both of them.
Just eases in. It's just gorgeous, isn't it?
Do you remember barefoot on the lawn with shooting stars? Do you remember loving on the floor in Belsize Park? Do you remember?
I mean, I literally, this is one of those tracks that I would put on my mixtape, and possibly it might have been on my mixtape, that just sat in the car, auto reverse cassette deck, big speakers in the back of the car, and just play this track, which contained this and maybe a bit of George Michael and some other stuff, just a Talking Heads, Prince, just repeat again and again and again and again.
It definitely. I mean, it's definitely one of those songs that when it comes on the radio, you turn it up. I
Yeah.
don't do mixtapes. I do albums from track 1 to the finish generally. But if I thought, yeah, well, I absolutely would. I mean, it sold 200,000 copies at the time, but it didn't make number 1. It was held off number 1. But do you know why? Who held it off number 1?
It would probably be, well, I mean, it probably Money for Nothing, let's say.
It was actually a charity single by a band called The Crowd, who did a version of You Never Walk Alone because of the Bradford City Stadium fire.
Ah, right. Yeah.
But otherwise, it would have been number 1 for sure, because it was out. I mean, at one point, the album sales outsold everything else in the week it was released or the week after it was released or something like that. Because this song, it was the album was released in June, but in the May they did a Terry Wogan show, and the performance on Terry Wogan endeared Marillion to the housewives of the nation, because there was this song and da-da-da-da. And then a couple of days later they're on Top of the Pops, and those 2 moments have been credited with the making it and breaking, as it turns out, of Marillion.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Fish, when you see him, he's not of this era like kind of Simon Le Bon, which housewives would like to run off with. He's the sort of guy that the housewives would like to invite him round to have pie and chips and sit in the kitchen and drink a cup of tea with, because he's just got that really nice.
Yeah, they could sit and watch a rom-com and have a little cry with him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am dead impressed, Catherine, that you see them at their convention weekends every other year. Fantastic.
Well, that's the thing is, the fan base is fiercely loyal.
Mm.
But when you go online and start looking, if you were a fan 30 years ago, you're a fan today and you're still going to see them, albeit in their new guise. And yet, Steve Hogarth obviously being their lead singer now. They've got a cult obsessed following.
Right, so let's spin on, because we're only 2 tracks in and we're halfway through nearly. So Lavender, again, a nice segue, and we'll play the segue from Kaylee.
Can you play the last couple of lines of the previous song? It's like just because there's an obvious link between the two songs.
Yeah. So I put it like a rock anthem, but the lyrics seem rather disconnected from the expansive sound and the melody, because obviously, we all know the lyrics for this. So here we go. Kaylee into Lavender.
Love song, Kaylee, it's more important to me now you're gone. Maybe it will prove that we were right, or I was wrong. I was walking in the park, dreaming of a spark, when I heard the sprinklers whisper, shimmer in the haze of summer lawns. Then I heard the children singing, they were running through the rainbows. They were singing a song for you. Well, it seemed to be a song for you, the one I wanted to write for you, for
Yeah, Derek Dick has certainly got a great voice, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, just my notes on this. I've got, obviously it takes elements of the 17th century folk song
Yeah.
Lavender Blue, which is interesting because when you listen or when you read the lyrics and listen to the lyrics, they sing Lavender Green, and they've actually flipped it. And I wonder whether there was it can't be a trademark or copyright because it's 17th century, it would have expired.
Yeah, you would have thought so.
Interestingly, it's only been streamed 20 million times on Spotify, as
Has it?
compared to Kaylee, which is 50 million times.
Yeah, so a few people do know them.
Yeah,
a few people do know them.
I don't know who LinkedIn user is, but Clutching was Zenith with Fish. For me, I mean, this album has been wonderful, but Clutching at Straws, which is Fish's last album, would be
That would be
better.
the one for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that moves us on to Bittersweet.
So again, just very quickly before we move on,
yeah.
the end of Lavender, there's a nice drum roll. It's not overly complicated, but I don't know how they've done it, but they've really got the bass rattling through. It's wonderful.
Well, I'll play that, and then when we get into the beginning of Bittersweet, there's like a mega famous drum intro. So see if you recognise the other song that this is, and
Okay.
it's exactly this other song. You got it?
Well, now you said that, I can hear In the Air Tonight, but I'm not sure.
It's not that I was thinking of. It is You Got the Look, Prince.
Which would have followed this album.
Yeah. So if you have influenced Prince, I reckon that's a pretty cool place to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that didn't come out till 1987. But yeah, again, this was one of those songs that the more I listened to it, the more depths I saw within the song. Yeah, there's a bit of that going on, isn't there?
And I'm getting tired by Pink Floyd.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of Pink Floyd influence going on here, isn't there? Who was, you know, a little bit before this.
Within the warmth of a shadow, not the regal creature of border caves, but the poor, misguided, directionless familiar of some obscure Scottish poet. The mist crawls from the canal like some primordial phantom of romance to cuddle.
So this is the one where I really started to notice this developing themes that we'd heard earlier on. So here, about here, you hear Lavender again.
That motif again. It just
Yeah.
repeats it.
And it's really, I find it really fascinating that pop is so often a series of 2, 3, 4 minute like brain dumps of ideas, and they package things. And here, somebody has Fish has stood back and thought much more about the entirety of the album, and I find that really refreshing and charming about this album.
I knew that I was a prog fan. I did a car journey once and just hit shuffle on my iPod in the car. And I drove for 2 or 3 hours and only listened to 6 or 7 songs because each song was like 20 minutes long or something. And you go, oh, yeah, you know you're a prog fan when you do that. It went on shuffle. But it's interesting because side 1 of this album, we're still on side 1, was actually written in he had dropped an acid tab or something. And it was written in a 10-hour period as he was coming down from this artificial high. So it's not surprising that if the whole side was written in one sitting, you get that repeating theme because it'll be his mind just doing whatever your mind does when you're not thinking straight.
Yeah. So I would agree with this. Take this over. I would take Silence over post Gabriel Genesis. Can't bear Phil Collins at any price. So, although he's made a good career.
Yeah. So just on this song, I mean, it's called Bittersweet, and I know that title with that spelling from a Hue and Cry live album, which was done in 1989, and I wondered whether there was a connection. I couldn't find a connection, but I think there probably is one somewhere because it's too unusual a spelling. But actually, this is the first time Marillion had done a multi-part song. And actually, all of the parts are film titles from the early 20th century.
Yeah, so Brief Encounter, Lost Weekend, Blue Angel, Misplaced Rendezvous, and Windswept Thumb.
Yeah, all film titles. No relation to the film. They've just picked the titles. And you kind of think, how does your mind work when you can do that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, on to Heart of Lothian.
My favourite track on the album.
Yeah, really good, really good. So my notes on this: he was born in Dalkeith, a town in Mid Lothian. Like all Scots, he's very pro being Scottish. Very proud of his Scottish heritage. The song is split into 2 parts. Firstly, Wide Boys, where Fish recalls fondly of when he was one of the Wide Boys, a term for teenagers spending all their cash in watering holes, pubs. Sir Walter Scott wrote a book called The Heart of Lothian, and that's probably where he got the title in that form from.
So I have a conflict story. If you go to Edinburgh and on a high street, there is a Heart of Lothian, and there's a heart-shaped stone in the walkway that is good luck to spit on. And I assumed that was the Heart of Lothian because the pilgrimage and went to see the Heart of Lothian. But I could be wrong, because Dalkeith is the nearest town to Edinburgh, I think.
Right. Okay.
But I don't know.
You may well be right then.
I've probably got a photograph of it on my phone somewhere.
Yeah, you spitting on the floor.
Well, not be spitting on it, but definitely pictures.
So here we go. Heart of Lothian. The lyrics actually are pretty good, aren't they? On the outskirts of nowhere, on the ring road to somewhere, on the verge of indecision, I'll always take the roundabout way.
Yeah.
Just lovely. Yeah, I mean, I get why this is your.
It's edgier. We've gone from the broken heart. We've gone to the love song. Yeah, I probably didn't say, but Lavender is actually the love song that's referred to in the previous song, where he says it's the love song I always wanted to write for you. Well, he only wrote it in the following thing, and then you get that bittersweet, and then you get this, and it's edgier, it's rougher, it's more angst. And the album is meant to portray Fish's journey from being a boy through to manhood, and you can kind of imagine this being his late teenage, I'm going to go out and get drunk and have a fight phase.
Yeah, absolutely. So track 6, Waterhole, Espresso Bongo.
Yeah, I did a search for this. I found some loose reference to Espresso Bongo being a film title or something, and there's not a lot to be found online about side 2, I have to say.
No, I find reading his lyrics very interesting because of the poetic nature of them and the way they conjure things up. So
Espresso Bongo apparently was a 1960s Cliff Richard film. And so you read all this stuff, and then Fish goes, yeah, but it's nothing to do with that. Okay, fair enough. So I've just read this whole article about a Cliff Richard film for nothing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we should maybe do a Cliff Richard album one day. Actually, let's not. So while the taxis gather in mock solemnity, funeral hearses court the death of virginity. It was paradise lost or paradise found. Did we gain respect, or were we holding ground? And I think that kind of black cabs in a row, kind of almost like a funeral procession, it conjures up a very strong image, doesn't it? In the rain, in that Scottish greyness. Yeah, absolutely. So here we go, Water.
When taxis gather in mock solemnity, funeral
it's definitely got that punk feel about it. This one, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, which is odd, given the competition we had, 40 minutes ago about it being a prog album, and I think Andrew said it's more soft rock, and now we're getting definite bits of edgy punk. But what we're not getting is new wave, but we are getting lots of synths.
Yeah,
and it really, I mean, I suppose it's a symptom of the time, isn't it? There was lots happening, and they've just taken the best bits that they could and molded it all together.
Yeah, I think we should quit with all of the Cliff Richard references now, Dan, because clearly "Carrie" is the best song, and All Saviour's Day. That's a tough one. That was a joke, just saying. So, Lords of the Backstage. What have you got on this? Because, like you said, I find a huge amount on any of the stuff on the second half.
No, I've got a few bits later on, but this early part of the album, like I said, but I'm also guilty. Like I said, I put it on. I got so far into the album, I forgot what I was listening to it for.
Yeah, I mean, and I found that this kind of the theme development and the spotting the little vignettes of melody from earlier on in the album became almost like a sport when listening to it.
Yeah.
Going, oh yeah, I've heard that bit, and it's like
it's when you found your previous reference to Lavender. When that song was playing, I'd be singing Lavender, thinking, "No, we've had that."
Why am I thinking that? Yeah, absolutely.
I did that a few times through the album,
and that kind of connectedness gives this a kind of and the segueing from track to track in many places gives it that gives it a coherence which is quite unusual, I think, from albums of this period. Because most of them were a collection of songs rather than, I mean, Pink Floyd obviously famously did, things like The Wall where it was a continuous story, but that's the rarity from this kind of period, isn't it?
It's definitely got, bear in mind, this is the mid-80s. We were just moving into sort of dance music. We were moving away from New Romantic. It was all very heavy electronic. I suppose Guns N' Roses were around a couple of years later. This was, excuse the pun, the fish out of water. And you read all these articles online, and there's all this narrative of, it changed prog rock. It probably did, because nobody was doing prog rock. We're 3 or 4 years away from Pink Floyd bringing out Momentary Lapse of Reason. And there's a huge gap between The Wall and Momentary Lapse.
Yeah.
It kind of stood alone. It was the only prog that was in play at the time, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Even Genesis had moved to pop.
Sorry?
Even Genesis had moved to pop music.
Yeah. I mean, although Peter Gabriel, what was he? He
did So right this time, just before.
So or Us.
Yeah.
At this point, yeah.
But there were still more pop albums than prog albums.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, they were like this. They were quite sophisticated, heavy albums. Not like the Genesis thing, which by this time was pop music, wasn't it?
I mean, you're quite right. They stood the test of time. They've stood the test of time because they were quality albums.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in context of the musical landscape at the time, they were definitely more on the pop side than prog side.
Yeah. Even the rhythm of this bit, which is kind of a little bit lopsided, isn't it? It's like 4/4/3/4, 4/4/3/4, and it's just really interesting how these are quite sophisticated techniques, aren't they, for a pop?
Well, interesting. The motif from that song that appears on Clutching at Straws.
Right.
So there's a link between all their albums. If you look at the album artwork, for example, there's a story that they kind of tell side by side. The magpie appears quite a lot. The jester appears quite a lot. So there's obviously a theme that kind of runs through their body of work as well.
Yeah.
Whether that was deliberate or not, I can only assume it is.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get stuff like this by it just happening by accident, do you? So, Blind Curve, the next of these kind of monster tracks.
Yeah,
and
10 minute long. Yeah.
Yeah. So, vocal under a bloodlight, passing strangers, Milo,
Milo. Yeah.
perimeter walk, and threshold.
So I've got something on Milo. Milo is written about John Maylett. He was a drummer with a Liverpool band called Rage.
Okay.
And Milo or John, died in a car crash in Ibiza in Spain in 1984. And Fish heard about this whilst he was on tour in Canada, touring the album Fugazi. And he goes on to talk about him being interviewed and him saying to the interviewers, "Look, my friend's just died. I don't really want to be doing this." And they just kind of carried on interviewing anyway. And this is his. So the Milo part of this is his angst and his lack of his way of expressing his feelings about the lack of respect he got from the interviewers.
Yeah. Sorry, you were going
I was going to say then Perimeter Walk, which is part 4 of this. Apparently it's a reference to the Doors song, Stoned Immaculate.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. It's very it's morphing, isn't it, to something altogether heavier and grander in terms of how it sounds.
It's definitely, to Jim's point, it is 2 songs. It's side A and side B,
Yeah.
and they are quite different, and they could sit in separate places and work equally as well.
Yeah.
Last night you said I was cold, untouchable. I'm only piece of action from another town. I just want to be free. I'm happy to be lonely. Can't you stay away? Just leave me alone with my thoughts. Just a runaway. Oh, just a runaway. I'm saving.
His voice is just so beguiling, isn't it? It's just delightful. So one of my comments about this was in this bit I'm just about to play. This is very, very much like The Wall. Very much like The Wall.
Oh, I remember too often with Milo and Paris turning sad and we cried on the phone. I never felt so alone. He was the first of our own.
And I think that gives it a kind of quite a nice, because clearly they have been inspired by, but I don't get any sense of just stealing here, and it kind of the familiarity with the Pink Floyd album, I find it quite soothing at this point.
Yeah, I mean that's what
It's not a rip-off.
But again, that bit you just played, that sounds very much like one of the tracks the song is on Clutching at Straws. So again, it's almost that theme between albums as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's whiz it forward a little bit into probably Passing Strangers.
Far out before. Perimeter. What? There's a presence.
Oh no, it's not.
I feel. Could have been ancient. Could have been mystical. There's a presence. Child. My child. My childhood. Childhood. A misplaced childhood. A childhood. A misplaced childhood.
again, so to your point, that's very The Wall. That's the scene where they're smashing up the TV in the hotel bedroom before Company Numb comes on.
And it has that kind of lift and expansiveness, like the sun's come over the horizon, and all of that stuff that is, because he's talking about how he's got a misplaced childhood and he wants it back, and please give it back to me. And then it all of a sudden it's like a weight's been lifted, and it's really every song is a rip off of something. Yeah, I guess so. I guess we've all been, but if Prince chooses to rip you off, that's a pretty good place to be, isn't it? So penultimate track, Childhood's End.
Yeah, let's see what I've got on Childhood. So Childhood's End was an Arthur C. Clarke novel concerning a race of beings that had grown from its infancy to ascended to a higher level of evolution. It was a theme that he was developed further in his classic 2001: A Space Odyssey. So, and Childhood's End also served as the inspiration for the Genesis track "Watcher of the Skies" from 1972's seminal Foxtrot.
Well, there we go.
Yeah. So again, another literary reference.
Yeah, and I can't find it in my notes because, like you, I've got so many pages of them. But the thing about all of the different authors that he was very keen on when he was young, and obviously he was a bit of a bookworm, and I find that kind of thing really, really charming. Like when somebody tells you that in my spare time I write poetry. I always find that incredibly, oh wow. I
always feel quite ignorant because that's not what I do.
No, I'm right with you there. What you mean? You're not wowed by people writing poetry?
I absolutely am.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
I am, because it's not me.
Absolutely, that's exactly where I'm coming from, and it's really interesting, isn't it, that even kind of quite unlikely characters have the ability to really impress sometimes with their knowledge and the depth of stuff that they do, and his lyrics are just such a great testament to his breadth of reading and his knowledge.
Yeah.
So here we go, Childhood's End. Interesting that again this bit it's a major version of a penny for your thoughts, my dear, a penny for your thoughts, my dear, which you can sing along to this if you want to, and it's just really interesting, isn't it, how all of these themes just circle round again and again, as we keep saying.
They've actually played the strings muted, and you've got that muted picking sound.
Yeah.
I was listening to it thinking, I recognise that from somewhere, and I can hear a song that clearly was inspired by that, and it'll come to me in a minute. Carry on.
It was morning, and I found myself mourning for a childhood that I thought I'd disappear. I looked out the window, and I saw a magpie in a rainbow. The rain had gone, I'm not alone. I turned to the mirror, I saw you, the child that was lost, the child before it broke his heart. That I believe was lost. Hey, you, surprised, more than surprised, to find the answers to the questions. Well,
I find I left that up for a long time by accident, actually. Probably the weakest song in the album. I don't think so. I think probably the because it's quite a nice breath of fresh air, because it's almost light-hearted by comparison, isn't it, to some of the stuff that we've.
Yeah, they've been to the growing up. They've been to the teenage angst and the young love bit, and this is them coming out the other side with a slightly different view on life. I've worked out the reference to the music song I could hear was oddly Mike and the Mechanics, The Living Years.
Yes.
Which was written by B.A. Robertson. but that start of that song, the guitar picking and that sound and that timbre was the living years.
Yeah. Which brings us on to the last track, White Feather. Yeah, a nice way to round out the album.
Yeah, I've got nothing on this. Again, I did a search and I found lots of Marillion articles to tell me what the white feather symbolises, but nothing about the song.
Mm.
You're quite right, but it's just a nice way to end the album.
Sorry?
That's the Heart of Lothian riff again.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as you said, there's no opportunity for you to mishear the lyrics when he's singing them, is there?
No.
I mean, just
even when he's belting, it's still crystal clear.
Yeah, remarkable singer, and that brings us to the end. And yeah, I mean, so funny that I was kind of looking forward to revisiting the album, but I knew what I would feel. That it was a complete waste of time, and I've got an album, but I'm only ever going to listen to one track on it. And in fact, what I've ended up with is a complete 180-degree about face, and I've found the whole thing to be a truly enlivening and interesting experience, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's just been brilliant, absolutely brilliant album.
Yeah, and I'll say I didn't know the album as an album. I knew the songs that were single. I knew all the songs pretty much because I've got so much of their live stuff. If you do a search in my iTunes library, there's a dozen versions of Kaylee, for example, because it's live at this hall and and they're all sorts. So I knew all the songs, but to hear it as an album, and this remastered version as well, it sounds beautiful.
Mm. Yeah,
I think it's 30 years old.
It has been fantastic. So, well, thank you, Catherine, for joining. Come back next week. Come back every week. There's always a couple of us up here talking about stuff. It's been such a lovely experience. Another one of those surprising albums. Is it in my top 10 albums of all time? Probably not. It probably is. Kaylee is probably in my top 10 songs of all time, ironically. And I did very much like the album, and it's been a really great experience. So thank you. The joy of the Walkman. Yeah, absolutely, Darren. So next week I'm being joined by Jim Wolfe, and we're going to be discussing Forever Changes from Love. So not a band I know at all, not an album I know at all, but I should be looking forward to exploring that, because I think when somebody comes with an album that means a lot to them and they're passionate about it, it's normally a good one. So Ieuan, thank you so much, mate. Absolutely fantastic. Everyone in the audience, thank you. It's just been brilliant having you all here joining us, and hopefully we'll see you all again next week. Until